The Indian independence movement was the first large-scale resistance to the British, which occurred in response to Britain's proposal for the division of India into two provinces in 1905. Because of this, the Indian National Congress started spreading the boycott of British goods. In 1906, Muslims formed the All-Indian Muslim League to balance the power of the Indian National Congress, which was dominated by Hindus. Then in 1919, a new series of laws were introduced, but they limited Indians' rights and freedoms. Gandhi called for a general strike to protest these laws. The massacre at Amritsar occurred on April 13, 1919, when 10,000 unarmed Indians gathered for a peaceful protest. British soldiers were ordered to fire into the crowd, causing 400 deaths and more than 1,000 wounded. This caused Gandhi to announce a campaign of massive and widespread non-violence resistance and non-cooperation with the British. This was an immediate success because millions of Indian voters boycotted the provincial elections of 1920. Unfortunately, the campaign ended before Gandhi had a chance to organize a final boycott, due to the fact that 22 officers were killed in their own police station by Indians. In 1927, the British government formed a commission to suggest reforms for India's government. Finally, after Gandhi's second Satyagraha, Indians demanded immediate independence in return for India's support in World War II. On August 15, 1947, British India became the independent nations of India and Pakistan. Egyptian independence and Wafd Party. Egypt became a British protectorate in 1914. Woodrow Wilson's 14 points inspired activists to end the protectorate after World War I. On January 13, 1919, 5 days before the opening of the Paris Peace Conference, the Wafd Party held a general congress, since Britain had refused them the right to go and speak in Paris. On February 7, 1919, Saad Zaghloul, a leader of the Wafd Party, gave a speech. The British started to become concerned about the Wafd Party's growing support after this. Wafdists collected thousands of signed powers of attorneys from Egyptian citizens, and another grassroots campaign was held to collect signatures to allow Zaghloul and other Wafd leaders to petition for Egypt's independence. On March 15, 1919, over 10,000 students, workers, and professionals marched on Cairo's Abdin Palace, protesting British rule. Women of the upper class were important leaders in boycotting British goods and directing other protests throughout the campaign for independence. After the third week of sustained protests in March of 1919, Britain realized that the political climate was spiraling out of control, so a series of changes began. On April 2nd, a strike had begun, and was going to last until the Wafd Party was recognized as official representatives of Egypt, the protectorate was abolished, and martial law was ended. Britain sent Lord Alfred Milner to Egypt to assess the possibilities of maintaining British control in Egypt. In response, the Wafdists and supporters committed many acts of civil disobedience. Milner left in March of 1920, and in his report advised Britain to abolish the protectorate and grant Egypt independence. Britain declared limited independence for Egypt on February 28, 1922, and a new Egyptian constitution was created in 1923. Catalonian independence. In November of 2014, nationalists held an unofficial poll, 80% of which backed independence. Catalonia had prepared a law of succession from Spain to be enacted if the region is not allowed to hold an independence referendum. Earlier this year, a Spanish court banned a former Catalan leader from holding office for 2 years as punishment for holding an independence referendum in 2014. Carles Puigdemont made a rare speech saying Catalans won't stop until they vote on their political future. Mariano Rajoy believes proper democracy means going to parliament, blackmail is intolerable, and national sovereignty will be sovereignty as long as Spaniards wish it to be so. On paper, Catalonia has home rule, but in reality, thanks to Spain's centrist seal, it is tightly controlled by the government in Madrid. More than 40 years after the death of dictator Francisco Franco, Catalans are still being discriminated against for speaking their own language. Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy's administration has failed to comply with 34 constitutional court judgments that are favorable to Catalonia. Every year, up to 2 million people have taken to the streets to claim the right to vote on independence, brought about by the Catalan National Assembly. A referendum was held on Thursday, June 23, 2016, to decide whether the UK should stay or leave the European Union. 51.9% voted to leave, and 48.1% voted to stay out of 30 million people who voted. One main reason that people want to leave is because of the economy. They don't like how money is sent to Brussels before being redistributed. Another reason to leave is immigration. Non-UK citizens are coming into the UK, stealing jobs from Europeans and using up already scarce public resources. A final reason for leaving is the struggle with identity. Leavers often don't see themselves as European and don't like how they must abide by some of the ridiculous policies of some European countries. Leavers argue that Brexiting would allow the UK to regain control over its laws, and Remainers don't have a good counter-argument. The first key objective of the Leavers is securing an explicit recognition that the euro isn't the only currency of the European Union. Another key objective is setting a target for the reduction of the burden of excessive regulation and extending the single market. A third objective is immigration. They want restricted access to in-work and out-of-work benefits to European Union migrants. Basically, they want to stop those coming to the UK from claiming certain benefits until they are a 4-year resident. And finally, the fourth objective, sovereignty. By allowing Britain to opt out from the Union's founding ambition, an ever closer union of the people of Europe can be forged. Since Britain voted to leave, it will leave the European Union by March of 2019. While there are many similarities and differences between the current and historical problems, here are a few main ones. By understanding these similarities and differences, we can arrive at new solutions to current issues. For example, if the last solution ended up causing more damage, we can learn from it, make necessary fixes, and solve a current or future problem. We could also look at previous solutions that were a success to solve current problems, since all of these movements are very similar. Here are a few possible solutions to prevent such movements in the future. Creating a clause would help because there would be no need for protests and marches. Everyone could arrive at the solution much quicker without all the fighting. Giving more people say in the government would help, since most everyone would be satisfied with the government's decisions because they got to choose that decision. Finally, opening voting to more people would allow the people's ideas to be implemented into the government. Therefore, there would be no need for an independence movement because everyone already has what they want.